Far away, at the very bottom of our planet, lies a land that almost no one has ever seen with their own eyes. A place of silence, older than any city, vaster than any desert. Antarctica, our world's southernmost continent, rests there, wrapped in an endless cloak of ice. If you were to stand at its edge, you would hear nothing but the faint hum of the wind brushing across frozen plains. There are no forests here, no fields of grass, no streets buzzing with life. Only snow, ice, and the soft creaking of glaciers moving slowly, like the planet's own heartbeat. Beneath this silence, however, secrets stir. For millions of years, Antarctica has been a vault of time, keeping locked away not only water and ice, but mysteries too, ancient rivers, lost landscapes, even invisible life, sealed in frozen darkness. It is as if the continent has been whispering quietly to itself, holding on to stories that the rest of the world has long forgotten. But what if those whispers grew louder? What if the ice that has hidden so many secrets were to vanish suddenly, completely? Tonight, we will drift into that possibility together. Gently, slowly, like a dream unfolding, we will imagine what happens if all the ice of Antarctica melted. It is not just an idea of science, it is also a story of transformation, of beauty and danger, of a planet breathing in new rhythms. Close your eyes and picture this land. Antarctica is so vast that it is larger than Europe, stretching endlessly across the bottom of the Earth like a frozen crown. Its surface is white and blinding in the sun, but under starlight it glimmers like powdered silver. For countless generations, this ice has been our world's great mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space, keeping Earth cool, protecting life with its silence. Now imagine that mirror breaking, shards of white melting into blue oceans, the quiet turning into rushing water, the whispers of Antarctica rising into a roar. And yet, let us not rush. The story of Antarctica is not only about fear, it is also about wonder. It is about understanding the balance that has carried us through time and realizing how fragile that balance truly is. As you drift deeper into this story, let the calm of this frozen land settle around you. Let its vastness remind you how small we are, and yet how connected every drop of water, every breath of air, tied to what happens here. In this journey, we will open the vault of ice and peer into its hidden chambers. We will wander beneath glaciers, through underwater rivers and secret lakes. We will meet creatures that should not exist, and imagine what would unfold if every last frozen drop of Antarctica melted into the sea. But before we go further, rest for a moment with the thought of this. Antarctica has been silent for millions of years. Tonight, we are listening to its story. Welcome now to the edge of the world. Imagine yourself stepping gently onto a continent made almost entirely of ice. Antarctica, an expanse so enormous that it covers more ground than Europe and stretches wider than the United States and Mexico combined. It is a land that feels more like another planet than part of Earth. Everywhere you look, white horizons stretch beyond the limits of your eyes. The ice here is thick, so thick that, on average, it towers more than 2 kilometers deep. Beneath it lies land that no sunlight has touched in millions of years. To walk across Antarctica is to walk on frozen time itself. Yet, despite its icy loneliness, this continent is not completely empty. Life has found its way even here, in ways both fragile and astonishing. On the coasts you might see penguins gathering in their black and white tuxedos, sliding on their bellies across the snow, or huddling close together to survive the endless night. Seals lounge lazily on floating icebergs, resting between their dives into freezing waters. Whales drift gracefully just offshore, their songs echoing beneath the waves like lullabies written in another language. And then there are the rare human figures, scientists bundled in thick coats, tiny specks of color, against the white desert. They are like explorers on an alien world, carefully studying ice cores, measuring winds, and listening to what the frozen continent is trying to tell us. Their research stations, lit up like warm lanterns in the cold, flicker as small signs of human presence in a land that otherwise belongs to silence. But even here, silence is not stillness. Antarctica is alive in its own quiet rhythm. Glaciers the size of mountains creep forward inch by inch, their weight reshaping the land below. Cracks echo through the night as ice shifts and fractures, like the slow breathing of a sleeping giant. Above, the sky is painted with soft veils of light, the aurora's green and violet curtains shimmering against a field of stars. This place, though distant, is deeply connected to us. Its ice holds the Earth's memories, layers upon layers of snowfall pressed into time, each one carrying whispers of ancient climates and long-forgotten winds. If you could listen closely, Antarctica would tell you the story of the world itself, its past, its present, and perhaps even its future. And hidden deep within this continent lies a glacier so immense, so fragile, that it has earned a name whispered with unease, the Doomsday Glacier. Its true name is Thwaites. But to understand why it matters, we must walk closer to its frozen heart. Among the vast frozen kingdoms of Antarctica, one glacier stands out, looming like a sleeping beast. Its name, in scientific terms, is Thwaites Glacier, but over time, it has earned a far more unsettling title, the Doomsday Glacier. Imagine a slab of ice so immense that it stretches more than 120 kilometers across, wider than the entire state of Florida. It is not just another frozen cliff in a land full of ice. It is a keystone, a pillar, holding back an ocean of water. If this single glacier were to collapse, it could trigger a chain of events that would change coastlines everywhere on Earth. The name Doomsday might sound dramatic, like something from a storybook, but scientists did not give it lightly. They chose it because Thwaites is melting far faster than they once believed possible. Already, it is releasing around 50 billion tons of ice into the sea every year. That number is almost impossible to imagine. If each ton were a single droplet, the sound would be like an endless rainstorm echoing into the oceans without pause. This glacier alone has already raised the oceans by several centimeters, silently reshaping the world's shorelines. It may seem small, just a few inches, but on a planet as vast as ours, even this tiny rise changes tides, pushes storms further inland, and swallows beaches where children once played. What frightens researchers most is not what Thwaites has already done, but what it might do. Some studies warn that instead of taking centuries to melt, as once assumed, the glacier could collapse within decades. Decades are not long in the life of Earth, they are just the space between generations. For us, it is tomorrow. Picture it as a door. Behind that icy threshold lies the sea, waiting. If Thwaites opens, even slightly, the ocean will come pouring through. Other glaciers, resting behind it like dominoes, may follow. The consequences would ripple outward, touching every coastline across the globe. Yet, standing before Thwaites, it does not appear violent. It appears calm, silent, almost eternal. Its cliffs of ice rise like cathedrals, pale blue in the soft Antarctic light. Snow drifts across its surface like feathers. If you were there, you might feel as though nothing could ever disturb it. And yet, beneath that calm face, something restless is stirring: heat, water, pressure. The giant is cracking, ever so slowly, as the world waits. In the stillness of the Antarctic night, Thwaites holds its breath, and so do we. Thwaites Glacier is not waiting quietly anymore. Beneath its frozen surface, the melting has already begun, and it is happening at a pace that scientists once thought impossible. Every year, about 50 billion tons of ice break free from its body and slide into the ocean. To imagine that much ice, picture a river made not of water, but of glaciers themselves, flowing endlessly into the sea. Each second, massive chunks splinter away, drifting outward like pale blue islands before dissolving into the dark waters. This glacier, all by itself, accounts for nearly 4% of the global sea level rise we have already witnessed. 4%, from just one corner of the frozen south. And that number is growing. The scientists who measure its retreat describe Thwaites as unstable. They worry that once its ice front cracks deeply enough, nothing will stop the rest from rushing forward. Imagine pulling one stone from a carefully balanced wall at first. Only a gap appears, but soon the whole structure tumbles. In much the same way, Thwaites is a gateway, holding back vast sheets of Antarctic ice. If it collapses, others will follow, and together they could push the oceans higher than human civilization has ever known. What unsettles researchers most is how quickly this might happen. For decades, we told ourselves that Antarctica's ice would melt slowly, over centuries, giving humanity time to adapt. But Thwaites is teaching us otherwise. New studies suggest the collapse could happen within this century, or even within the lifetimes of people alive today. And still, if you stood at the glacier's edge, it would not look like disaster. The ice stretches calm and endless. Snow falls softly, muffling every sound. From afar, it seems peaceful, like a frozen dream. Only satellites, radars, and careful measurements reveal the truth, a giant slipping into the sea. The world does not feel its weight yet. Cities still rise, beaches still shine, and harbors still welcome ships. But somewhere far to the south, the Doomsday Glacier is unraveling inch by inch, ton by ton. And if it were to let go all at once, if the frozen centuries collapsed in only seconds, the world would wake to a very different tomorrow. Let us close our eyes and press gently on the fast-forward button of time. The glacier that normally crumbles inch by inch, year by year, suddenly unravels in a single breath. In seconds, Thwaites Glacier surrenders its frozen weight to the sea. The Southern Ocean swells, rippling outward like a stone dropped into a still pond. But this stone is vast, and the ripples do not stop. They race northward, spilling into the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic, and the Pacific, carrying with them the memory of Antarctica's broken silence. Sea levels rise 60 centimeters, almost 2 feet in the blink of an eye. At first, it seems like a small number, but the ocean is not a glass of water. It is the planet's most powerful sculptor. 2 feet of rising seas is enough to redraw entire coastlines. In San Francisco, water seeps quietly into streets that once bustled with cars and laughter. The waves lap against the edges of Golden Gate Park, turning familiar paths into shallow streams. In Miami, the ocean pours in more fiercely, rushing through neighborhoods that once stood bright under the Sunday New Orleans, already fragile. Watch as water spill over levees like an old wound reopening. It is not a violent tsunami that comes crashing down, but a slow, relentless surge, the kind of flood that does not retreat, the kind that quietly claims the land and refuses to give it back. And so the question whispers, why did this giant glacier give way? What was happening beneath its silent, glittering face that made it collapse so quickly? The answer lies not on the surface, but far below, in places hidden from the human eye. There, beneath the ice, something ancient and fiery is at work, something that has been gnawing at Thwaites for centuries. But before we descend into those secret places, let us pause with this thought. The ocean, vast and eternal, does not rush. It simply rises, inch by inch, wave by wave, until one day, the land we knew has quietly become the sea. Beneath the white deserts of Antarctica, where the world appears still and lifeless, a hidden world is moving quietly in the dark. It may surprise you to know that under the Doomsday Glacier, far beneath its frozen armor, rivers are flowing. Not rivers of ice, but of liquid water, sliding, twisting, and rushing unseen. These rivers are not fed by gentle rain or mountain springs. They are born from the glacier itself, melted by heat that rises from the heart of our planet. Deep beneath our feet, Earth's molten core never truly rests. It releases energy upward, warming the bedrock in secret, as though the planet is breathing warmth into the frozen south. The meltwater gathers, drop by drop, until it carves tunnels under the ice, Over centuries, those tunnels grow into rivers, sliding beneath the glacier like silver threads through a dark tapestry. With every flow, they weaken the bonds, holding the glacier to the land. It is as if the very foundation of the ice is being slowly unstitched, seam by seam. Scientists have traced these under-ice rivers, and what they've found is astonishing. Some are hundreds of kilometers long, carrying water as swiftly as the Amazon's tributaries. Yet all of it hidden beneath 2 kilometers of ice. Imagine a whole world of rushing streams and quiet lakes, sealed away in darkness, untouched for millions of years. It is this hidden warmth, this quiet erosion, that helps explain why Thwaites is breaking apart faster than we expected. The glacier is not melting only from above, where the sun's rays touch it, but also from below, where Earth itself is loosening its grip. Picture the glacier as a great bridge of ice. The sun presses on it from the sky, and the rivers nibble at its pillars from below. Sooner or later, the bridge gives way. And so, when we think of Antarctica, we must not imagine it as lifeless or still. It is alive in its own way, rivers running in secret, currents shifting, heat rising from within. It is a world beneath a world, reminding us that even the coldest places hide the fire of Earth. If we could peel back the blanket of ice covering Antarctica, we would find not emptiness, but an entire hidden continent waiting in silence. Beneath the glaciers, valleys stretch wide, mountains rise unseen, and ancient lakes shimmer in total darkness. It is a secret Earth, preserved for millions of years under kilometers of frozen glass. These landscapes are not small. Some valleys run deeper than the Grand Canyon, buried beneath layers of white silence. Entire mountain ranges, taller than the Alps, lie entombed in ice, their peaks pressed down, unseen by human eyes. Between them, lakes of liquid water rest quietly, sealed away from air and light, as if frozen in time. One of these is Lake Vostok, so large it rivals the Great Lakes of the Northern Hemisphere. For more than 15 million years, it has been cut off from the rest of the world, holding life that has evolved in perfect isolation. Its waters have never known the sky, never felt the touch of sunlight. To look upon them would be like glimpsing another planet, an alien sea right here on Earth. And rivers, too, rivers flowing like veins through the darkness. They carry warmth and nutrients, linking these hidden lakes into a network. Scientists call it a subglacial hydrological system, but perhaps it is better imagined as the secret bloodstream of Antarctica, pulsing beneath its frozen skin. When explorers drill into these places, they do so with caution, as though they are knocking on the door of another world. What if life is already there, fragile and strange? What if ancient organisms stir in the black waters, untouched for epochs? This is what makes Antarctica more than just a desert of ice. It is not only a shield of frozen time, it is a vault, a hidden library of Earth's forgotten chapters. And every glacier, every crack in the ice, is a whisper from that secret world, reminding us that the surface is never the whole story. Above, the land may look still, but below, rivers run, lakes shimmer, mountains rise, and life may be waiting. Antarctica is not only the end of the Earth, it may also be its deepest beginning. Antarctica may feel distant, as though it belongs to another world entirely. Yet, in truth, it is one of the great guardians of our planet. To understand why, we must look not only at its beauty, but at its immensity. The continent is cloaked in an ice sheet that stretches over 14 million square kilometers, an area 1.5 times the size of the United States. Imagine a blanket so vast that it could cover entire nations at once, spreading endlessly across the horizon. And this blanket is not thin. It is, on average, more than 2 kilometers thick. In some places, it towers to nearly 5. Beneath that weight lies not just land, but a frozen archive of time itself. Within this ice rests 25 million cubic kilometers of frozen water, about 90% of all the ice on Earth. Locked away in its crystalline embrace, is 60% of the planet's fresh water, enough to fill every river, every lake, every reservoir, many times over. It is as though Antarctica has been keeping Earth's most precious treasure in a vault, holding it safe for millions of years. But Antarctica is not just a vault. It is also a mirror. Its bright, reflective surface bounces sunlight back into space, cooling the Earth and balancing the heat of the Sunday. Without it, our world would be far warmer, our climate more unstable. In this way, Antarctica is a quiet partner in every breath we take, every crop that grows, every drop of rain that falls. Its frozen expanse governs ocean currents, stabilizes weather patterns, and feeds the delicate rhythms of life far beyond its borders. A penguin, standing at the South Pole, and a farmer tending fields on the other side of the world are connected by the same frozen heart. And yet, for all its strength, Antarctica is fragile. Its ice is ancient, but it is not eternal. Beneath its calm surface, warmth seeps upward, oceans nibble at its edges, and winds carry whispers of change. To lose this ice would not be the loss of a distant wilderness. It would be the undoing of balance itself, a shift so great that it would ripple outward to every coastline, every sky, every life. As we rest here, let us remember, Antarctica is not far away. It is with us, always quietly, invisibly, holding the planet steady in its frozen hands. When we think of the polar regions, it is easy to imagine them as the same endless ice, endless cold. But Antarctica is not the Arctic. The North Pole is only a thin cap of ice floating on the sea. Antarctica, however, is solid. Beneath its icy armor lies an entire continent of mountains, valleys, and plains, covered almost completely by a frozen shell. 98% of this land is buried under ice so thick that its true shape has remained hidden from human eyes. Yet, when scientists peer beneath with radar and satellites, a forgotten geography appears. It is a land of rugged ridges and basins, of high plateaus and shadowy canyons, a world that, without its icy cloak, might look like any other continent, except colder, quieter, and untouched for millions of years. And hidden along its edges are seas of mystery. More than 1.5 million square kilometers of ocean lie trapped beneath the ice. Imagine entire coastlines, sealed away in darkness, where waves lap quietly against frozen ceilings, unseen by sky or Sunday. This is one of the strangest truths about Antarctica. What looks like a lifeless sheet of white is, in fact, a continent of hidden worlds. It is not simply ice, it is land and water woven together, bound beneath a silence so complete that it feels otherworldly. The difference between the poles tells us something important. While the Arctic ice floats and can melt without greatly raising sea levels, Antarctica's ice rests on solid ground. If it melts, the oceans do not just swell a little, they rise enormously, swallowing coasts and reshaping continents. Antarctica is a sleeping giant, resting on stone, but wrapped in ice. To understand what happens if that giant awakens, we must imagine the unimaginable, a world where every last frozen drop has melted away. Now, let us allow our minds to drift toward a vision that feels almost impossible. Imagine every flake of snow, every shard of glacier, every kilometer of ice covering Antarctica, gone, melted, dissolved, released into the sea. The vault has been opened. What would such a world look like? First, the oceans would swell, rising not by inches, nor even by a few feet, but by a staggering 70 meters. That is more than 230 feet of water, rushing to claim the coasts. The map of Earth would no longer be the map we know. Shorelines would vanish. Entire countries would slip beneath the waves. Cities like New York, Shanghai, London, Mumbai, all gone, their skylines drowned in silence. Venice, which has lived with water for centuries, would disappear without a trace. The world's great harbors would sink, and with them, the histories of trade and travel they once carried. More than 3 billion people, Nearly half of humanity live along coastlines. For them, there would be no escape. Homes would vanish in hours. Crops, fields, and fresh water would be swallowed by salt. Civilizations built over thousands of years would dissolve in a single generation. But it is not only humans who would suffer. The seas themselves would change. The added fresh water would disrupt currents that have flowed for millennia, unraveling the patterns that carry warmth and nutrients across the globe. The great conveyor belts of the ocean, the secret threads that connect climates and feed life, would slow, stumble, perhaps even stop, and the skies, too, would shift. With Antarctica's white mirror gone, sunlight would no longer be reflected back into space. The Earth would absorb more heat. Deserts would spread. Forests would falter. The balance of seasons would unravel. It is almost too vast to picture, this cascade of change. A single continent melting, and the entire planet reshaped. A reminder that Antarctica is not just distant ice. It is the balance point of Earth itself. And yet, hidden in this vision, is another kind of mystery. For as the ice vanishes, the land beneath would awaken. Rivers, valleys, and ancient lakes long buried would greet the sun once more. In their depths, creatures and microbes unseen for millions of years might emerge, stepping into a world they have never known. The Great Melt is not only a flood, it is also a revealing, a lifting of the veil, and what lies beneath may be as wondrous as it is dangerous. When we picture Antarctica's ice melting, we often think first of water, the oceans rising, the coasts retreating, but hidden in that frozen vault are things far smaller and perhaps far more unsettling. For inside the layers of ancient ice lie organisms that have not stirred for thousands, even millions of years. Trapped in crystal silence are microbes and viruses from forgotten ages, tiny passengers carried through time. Some were locked away when mammoths still roamed the earth. Others may date back to climates warmer than our own. They have slept, perfectly preserved, as though frozen in amber, waiting in the stillness of the ice. If all of Antarctica's frozen layers were to thaw at once, these ancient life forms would awaken, invisible to the eye, but powerful in their mystery. They could spill into rivers, lakes, and oceans, and from there into the wider world. Our immune systems, shaped by centuries of exposure to familiar microbes, would be defenseless. These ancient pathogens belong to a time before humans even existed. They are strangers to us, and we to them. To breathe them, drink them, or touch them would be to encounter the unknown directly, an ancient riddle written in biology. Some scientists imagine that many of these organisms might perish quickly, unable to survive in the modern world. Yet others warn that some may adapt, finding new hosts among animals or people. Without prior exposure, our defenses could fail. A sickness we have never known could spread across the earth, as silent and unstoppable as the melting that released it. It is a thought both haunting and humbling. That ice, which seems so empty and lifeless, may hold not only water, but also life's forgotten pages. A reminder that time does not erase, it only waits. And if those frozen stories were to awaken, humanity would face a test unlike any before. Not against storms or rising seas, but against invisible echoes of the ancient earth. If ancient microbes were to awaken, the story of Antarctica would no longer be one of distant ice, but one of human frailty. For all our technology, for all the cities we have built and the medicines we have made, we remain bound to the quiet laws of nature. Imagine a pathogen from a forgotten age, something our bodies have never met. To us, it would be as alien as a visitor from another planet. Our immune systems, shaped by generations of battles with familiar viruses and bacteria, would stand unprepared. No memory to guide them, no defenses ready. Illness could spread not with the roar of waves, but with the whisper of breath, a cough, a touch, a drop of water. In villages and in cities, across borders and seas, it would move silently, like shadows slipping through the cracks of our crowded world. And yet, even here, there is tenderness. For vulnerability is also a reminder of connection. The same fragility that makes us fear the unknown is what binds us to one another. In facing such threats, we are reminded that we are not separate, but shared, that the health of one becomes the health of many. In the quiet of night, it is humbling to realize how small we are compared to the ancient span of time that Antarctica holds. Our civilizations are young, our medicines recent. Against microbes that have waited for millennia, we are but a fragile experiment of nature, still learning how to endure. But fragility is not the same as weakness. From it comes resilience, and from resilience, hope. Even as we imagine these shadows rising from the ice, we remember that humanity has always found ways to adapt, to heal, and to move forward. Antarctica reminds us not only of our powerlessness, but of the delicate thread that ties all life together, past, present, and future. Though the idea of ancient pathogens rising from the ice may stir unease, it is not the whole story. For as fragile as humanity is, we are also endlessly inventive. Our curiosity, the same force that carried us across oceans and into the stars, also guides us to find solutions in times of peril. Scientists today are not only imagining these threats, they are preparing for them. Across laboratories, researchers are developing new ways to fight infections, building medicines that adapt as quickly as the microbes themselves. Some work with gels and liquid forms that deliver higher doses of drugs more gently, replacing the hard tablets that so many struggle to swallow. Others design systems that release medicine slowly, timed with the body's needs, like a quiet rhythm in the bloodstream. These advances are not only for pandemics or emergencies. They are already helping people every day, children who cannot take pills, elders who need steady treatments, patients, and even animals who benefit from these softer, kinder approaches. It is comforting in a way to remember this. Just as Antarctica holds mysteries in silence, humanity holds resilience in imagination. For every hidden danger that might stir beneath the ice, there are minds working tirelessly to meet it, to soften its blow, to turn fear into knowledge, and knowledge into healing. Of course, we cannot know if the frozen viruses of millennia past would ever survive in our world. Some may fade as quickly as they awaken. Others might challenge us in ways we can hardly picture. But alongside that uncertainty lives another truth. We are not powerless. In the same way the earth slowly shapes ice and stone, we too shape our destiny through invention, compassion, and a refusal to stop learning. So while the thawing of ancient microbes reminds us of our vulnerability, it also reveals our strength, a species that faces the unknown, not with silence, but with the will to endure. Beneath the thick shelves of ice that extend far into Antarctica's seas, a secret world of life clings to the underside of the frozen ceiling. At first glance, one might expect nothing to live here, in the darkness, in the cold, in waters so still they seem lifeless. And yet, there is movement, there is wonder. Hanging from the icy roof are delicate beings called anemones. Unlike their tropical cousins that sway among coral reefs, these Antarctic anemones live upside down, burrowed into the ice above them. Their pale bodies dangle like tiny lanterns, their tentacles drifting gently in the frigid water. To watch them is to glimpse something both fragile and otherworldly, as though stars themselves had fallen and were now glowing faintly beneath the sea. Fish and small crustaceans swim quietly between them, moving through the black water with slow grace. These are creatures evolved not for speed, but for survival. In a place with almost no light and little food, every movement must be careful, every breath measured. The scientists who first discovered these under-ice ecosystems were astonished. Life was not only surviving, it was thriving in forms they had never seen before. Some of these creatures bend the rules we thought were fixed. Anemones, for instance, are usually rooted in one spot like plants of the sea. But here, in Antarctica, they wriggle and wander, drifting away from their icy anchors as though searching for something unseen. It feels dreamlike, this upside-down world. Oceans with ceilings, creatures that live like stars stitched into ice. and movements so subtle they blur the line between animal and spirit. Far from sunlight, far from warmth, Antarctica's hidden seas remind us of life's persistence. No matter how harsh the world becomes, life finds a way quiet, strange, and beautiful. In the shadowed waters beneath Antarctica's ice, life survives without sunlight. No beams of gold break through the frozen ceiling. No green plants bloom to feed the food chain. And yet, creatures endure. But what, in this darkness, do they eat? The answer is both humble and astonishing. Tiny bits of plankton, drifting in on ocean currents, serve as the first course. Microscopic travelers carried from faraway seas, they become nourishment for fish, for crustaceans, for the quiet bloom of under-ice life. Even the smallest fragments, flakes of organic matter, specks invisible to the human eye, are gathered, like crumbs of a forgotten feast. But there is more, something stranger. These creatures dine not only on the present, but also on the past. Buried in the sediment, trapped for millions of years, lie the remains of organisms from ancient, warmer Earths, bacteria, skeletons, and bodies of long-dead creatures. In the eternal cold, they did not vanish. They waited, slowly decaying, slowly releasing what little energy remained. They became a banquet for the living. It is, in a way, like eating the echoes of time. The anemones that wriggle on the underside of the ice, the fish that drift silently in the dark, they are sustained by meals older than humanity itself. It is survival built upon memory, life feeding on the ghosts of other lives. And though it may sound eerie, it is also profoundly beautiful. In this place, nothing is wasted. Even death becomes nourishment. Even the past finds a way to support the present. So when we think of Antarctica as barren, we must remember this hidden truth. Beneath the silence lies a banquet of ages, where life, fragile yet enduring, gathers around a table set by time itself. Glaciers are like dominoes. When one tips, others follow. And so, with Thwaites collapsing into the sea, its neighbors begin to tremble. Massive walls of ice, each one the size of a mountain range, crack and fracture, then slide forward, breaking apart into the waiting ocean. The sound would not be a single roar, but a chorus of shattering, echoing across Antarctica's empty plains. Icebergs the size of cities drift outward, glowing faintly blue against the dark water, carrying with them the weight of centuries. As more ice collapses, the oceans rise higher, 2.5 meters, 8 feet. Entire coastlines retreat. Cities that once stood proud along the shore begin to drown, one by one. Boston, New York, Miami. The streets where children played are gone, replaced by quiet canals. The hum of traffic is replaced by the lapping of waves against buildings half submerged. In Lagos, in Mumbai, in Shanghai, millions are forced to leave their homes, their memories, their roots. Humanity's busiest ports, gateways of trade and connection, lie broken, their docks and cranes swallowed by salt water. It is not only the water that changes. The rhythm of life is shaken. Families flee inland, carrying what little they can. Governments scramble, building temporary shelters. But the tide does not wait. And still, Antarctica continues to unravel. Each glacier that falls weakens the next. The great ice sheet, once thought eternal, is now revealed as fragile glass, shattering piece by piece. This is the nature of chain reactions. They begin quietly, but end with a force that feels unstoppable. A reminder that on Earth, balance is delicate, and when it tips, it does not tip slowly. It may seem strange to think of ice as heavy, but Antarctica's ice is not just a thin glaze, it is a mountain piled upon a mountain. Together, its frozen mass weighs more than 24 billion megatons. Such weight is almost beyond imagining, and with that weight comes something even more mysterious. Gravity. Just as the moon pulls at Earth's oceans to create the tides, so too does Antarctica's vast sheet of ice exert its own gentle tug. Its sheer mass draws nearby waters toward it, raising sea levels along its frozen coasts. The ice does not simply sit upon the land. It reshapes the ocean around it, holding the sea close, like a giant pulling a blanket tightly around its feet. But what happens when the ice melts? That invisible pull weakens, the grip loosens, and suddenly the seas closest to Antarctica begin to fall, sinking lower against its retreating shores. Yet this is not relief, for the water that once hugged Antarctica is not gone. It has spilled outward, spreading across the rest of the world. Farther from the poles, oceans rise higher than before, surging into distant cities and coastlines. It is a paradox both beautiful and unsettling. As Antarctica loses ice, its neighbors watch the sea retreat, while continents an ocean away drown beneath swelling tides. A reminder that gravity itself ties us together, and that nothing in nature happens in isolation. To see the seas rise and fall in opposite directions is to glimpse Earth's hidden mechanics, quiet, powerful, and deeply interconnected. The ice does not belong only to Antarctica. Its weight, its pull, its silence, it belongs to all of us. As the seas climb higher, they do not simply wash over empty beaches or distant marshes. They reach into the very heart of civilization, flooding the landmarks that once stood as symbols of our shared story. In Washington, D.C., the waters rise around the Jefferson Memorial. Its white columns, which once reflected proudly in the tidal basin, now shimmer beneath the surface, their symmetry broken by the rippling tide. The memorial, once a place for quiet reflection, becomes a drowned ruin, visited only by fish drifting through its arches. Far to the north, in Boston, Fenway Park, the oldest baseball stadium in America, is swallowed by salt water. The emerald field where cheers once roared becomes a shallow lagoon, its scoreboard peaking above the water like a relic of another age. And across the ocean, Venice, the city that has lived with water for 1,000 years, finally surrenders to it. The bells of its towers no longer toll, for the towers themselves stand in silence beneath the sea. But it is not only these few monuments. Cities across the globe lose their treasures, statues, temples, libraries, mosques, cathedrals, all carried away by the advancing tide. Mumbai's crowded streets, Shanghai's glowing skyline, Lagos's bustling markets, all transformed into drowned ghostscapes. For humanity, these monuments were more than stone and steel. They were anchors of memory, places where stories were told, where nations were born, where generations gathered. Their loss is not measured only in architecture, but in identity. The ocean does not mourn as it takes them. The waves do not pause for history. They rise, they cover, they move on. But in the quiet after, we remember. We remember that even our grandest creations are temporary, fragile against the timeless patience of the sea. As the oceans surge inland, their touch extends beyond cities and monuments. The salt water does not stop at the edges of the streets, it seeps into the earth itself. Fields that once grew golden wheat, green rice, or corn swaying in the wind, are now coated in brine. The soil, once fertile, hardens and cracks. Seeds planted there can no longer sprout. The salt poisons more than the land. It sinks into the ground, seeping into aquifers, the hidden reservoirs of fresh water that lie beneath the surface. For thousands of years, these underground rivers have quietly supplied drinking water to millions. But now, their taste changes. Clear, sweet water becomes bitter and saline, no longer fit to drink. For a farmer, the disaster comes quietly. One season, the crops rise tall. The next, they wither and bend, the leaves scorched not by sun but by salt. Wells that once gave life now give only sickness. Families walk farther and farther to find what once flowed freely from their soil. And so, the crisis deepens. It is not only the flooding of coasts, but the slow poisoning of the land. Nations that once thrived on agriculture face hunger. Cities far from the ocean, untouched by waves, feel the absence in markets, in kitchens, in empty plates. Water, too, our most vital companion, becomes scarce. The paradox is cruel. As seas rise higher, the water we need most slips further from reach. The earth is awash in blue, yet thirst spreads across continents, and beneath it all lies a quiet truth. The same ice that once held 60% of Earth's fresh water has melted into salt and sea. What was once a gift of balance now becomes a challenge of survival. The ice does not release only water. Along with its ancient rivers and buried secrets, it also carries something far more dangerous: bacteria. Frozen for millennia, these tiny forms of life emerge into the modern world, carrying traits that make them unlike anything we have faced before. Some of them are harmless, mere relics of a distant past, but others are not so gentle. Trapped in the ice are strains of bacteria, linked to illnesses we already know: respiratory infections, gut diseases, even genetic conditions like those tied to cystic fibrosis. Yet these are not ordinary microbes. They possess a kind of hidden armor, resistance to the antibiotics we depend on today. Think of antibiotics as our shields, medicines that have protected humanity for less than a century. They work by outsmarting bacteria, by breaking their walls, by silencing their growth. But the bacteria locked in the Antarctic ice have had ages to evolve. They learned defenses long before we even existed. And now, released into our world, they could share those defenses with modern bacteria, passing genetic fragments like secret notes between enemies. The result? Infections that once yielded to medicine might no longer respond. A simple wound, a cough, or a fever could become something untreatable, spreading silently through hospitals and homes. And yet, like every shadow in nature, there is another side. These microbes, strange as they are, may also carry gifts. Their resistance could inspire the creation of new medicines, stronger shields forged from their own hidden strengths. They might even help clean toxic waste, or serve as a key to biodegradable plastics. Enemies on one hand, teachers on the other. Still, the thought is sobering. As the ice melts, it does not only bring rising seas, it brings invisible challengers, small enough to ride on a drop of water, powerful enough to change the fate of millions. In the end, the Doomsday Glacier threatens not only our coastlines, but our bodies, our health, and our fragile confidence in the safety of the world we know. The oceans are not still. Beneath their rolling waves lies a slow, steady rhythm, a circulation so vast that it links every sea into one great system. Scientists sometimes call it the global conveyor belt. Imagine a river, not confined to a single valley, but winding around the entire Earth, carrying warmth, salt, and life itself. It begins with a simple truth: salty water is heavier than fresh. In the polar regions, where icy winds cool the sea, the water becomes dense enough to sink deep into the ocean floor. As it descends, it pushes other water forward, setting in motion a loop that circles the globe. This movement delivers heat from the tropics to colder latitudes, balancing climates. It also lifts nutrients from the dark depths to the sunlit surface, where plankton bloom and feed the oceans. But now, as Antarctica's glaciers melt, the system begins to stumble. The fresh water pouring into the sea dilutes the salt, making the surface lighter, less able to sink. The conveyor slows. Its rhythm falters, like a lullaby interrupted mid-song. Without this steady current, the world would change in ways both subtle and profound. Europe, warmed for millennia by the Gulf Stream, could freeze under colder winters. Tropical regions might grow hotter and harsher, their rains retreating, and the deep ocean, starved of circulating nutrients, would fall silent, leaving plankton and fish with nothing to sustain them. It is easy to forget that the oceans are more than water. They are memory, balance, and breath. With each disruption, Earth's climate stumbles further from the path it has walked for thousands of years. The conveyor belt of the seas is like the planet's heartbeat, and with every glacier that melts into it, the rhythm grows weaker, unsteady, and uncertain. The melting of Antarctica does not point to a single destiny. Instead, it opens the door to two very different futures, one of heat, the other of cold. Both are written in the oceans, waiting to unfold. In one version of tomorrow, the conveyor belt of the seas falters, and warmth spreads unchecked. Without the ice's reflective shield to bounce sunlight away, the earth grows darker, absorbing heat like stone beneath summer Sunday. Deserts creep farther, droughts linger longer, and the air grows heavy with rising temperatures. This is the world most imagine, a planet growing ever hotter, year after year, until even the poles are stripped of their snow. But there is another possibility, hidden in the delicate dance of ocean currents. If massive icebergs break away from Antarctica and drift into the Atlantic before melting, they could release such floods of fresh water that the circulation halts completely. With no warmth carried northward, Europe could plunge into sudden winters. The balance of winds and rains could twist, transforming lush lands into frozen fields. It is a paradox. Melting ice, the symbol of warming, could, in the right conditions, bring about a deep chill. Some scientists believe this could even resemble the beginnings of an ice age, though unlike the slow marches of the past, it would arrive swiftly, within decades. Which path would Earth follow? That answer remains hidden in the ice itself, in the timing, in the pace, in the fragile connections between air, sea, and land. What is certain is that Antarctica does not melt quietly. It reshapes the heartbeat of the entire world. And whether the future is fire or frost, one truth remains. Our planet is not fixed. It is alive, shifting, balancing, and rebelling against every change. When we think of life in the ocean, we imagine whales breaching, dolphins leaping, or shoals of silver fish flashing in the light. Yet the true foundation of the sea's vast web of life is something so small it drifts unseen: phytoplankton. These microscopic plants are the quiet gardeners of the ocean, floating near the surface. They breathe in sunlight, sip on nutrients, and bloom into invisible forests. Every breath of oxygen we take carries their signature phytoplankton, produce more than half of the air we breathe. They are the planet's hidden lungs, rising and falling with the tides. Now, as Antarctica melts, the fate of these tiny beings twists in surprising ways. The collapse of ocean currents threatens to starve them, cutting off the nutrients that once surged upward from the deep. In many seas, they would wither, leaving silence where abundance once thrived. But in the waters around Antarctica, the story changes. The melting ice itself releases iron, a rare gift in the ocean. For phytoplankton, iron is a feast. Fed by this sudden bounty, blooms may spread across the southern seas like vast, invisible meadows. In the stillness of the melt, life flourishes. And this bloom is more than survival, it is service. As phytoplankton grow, they absorb carbon dioxide from the air, tucking away some of the greenhouse gases that warm our world. Though small, their work is mighty, offering Earth a momentary breath of relief. It is humbling to think, while glaciers crumble and seas rise, salvation might begin with creatures no larger than dust. They do not roar, they do not resist. They simply grow, drifting quietly beneath the ice, carrying the weight of life on their fragile, glowing shoulders. Ice is more than frozen water, it is Earth's mirror. Its bright surface reflects sunlight back into space, keeping the planet cool. But as Antarctica's glaciers vanish, that mirror shatters. Where once there was shining white, now there is dark sea, absorbing heat instead of deflecting it. The planet begins to drink in the sun's fire. The warming does not stop there. In the oceans, tiny fungi awaken, invisible but powerful. Like the leaf litter decomposers in a forest, these fungi break down dead matter drifting in the sea. As the water warms, their work speeds up, releasing plumes of carbon dioxide into the air. What was once stored safely in the deep is now returned to the sky, thickening the blanket of gases that hold Earth's heat close. And as glaciers collapse, they pour vast layers of fresh water across the surface of the salty ocean. This mixing weakens the sea's ability to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The ocean, once our greatest ally in capturing greenhouse gases, grows sluggish, less able to help. The warmth feeds upon itself. Melting ice uncovers dark seas. Dark seas absorb more heat. Heat awakens fungi. Fungi release more carbon. Carbon warms the air, and still more ice melts. It is a spiral gentle at first, but gathering strength, like a song that rises note by note into something unstoppable. For us, it would mean summers that grow longer and harsher, storms more restless, deserts more hungry, forests more fragile, a slow fever spreading across the skin of the earth. And yet, in the silence of Antarctica, it would not look like fire. It would look like water-calm seas stretching farther inland, icebergs drifting away like ghosts, a continent dissolving into memory. This is how the earth warms, not with a sudden blaze, but with quiet, steady steps, each one pulling the balance further from where it once stood. As the last of Antarctica's ice gives way, something astonishing emerges. Beneath the frozen cloak, landscapes rise into view places, untouched by sunlight for millions of years. It is as though the earth has drawn back a veil, revealing secrets long kept in silence. Stretching across the continent is a canyon system deeper than the Grand Canyon itself. Carved by ancient rivers, it winds for hundreds of kilometers, plunging nearly 3.5 kilometers below sea level. Imagine walking through such a valley, walls towering above you, shadows stretching endlessly, a cathedral built not by human hands but by time itself. For eons, this canyon lay hidden beneath ice, its enormity concealed. Now it breathes again, vast and raw. And there, glimmering like a jewel newly unearthed, lies Lake Vostok. Larger than many of the world's great lakes, it has been sealed beneath the ice for 15 million years. Its waters are pristine, untouched by wind or sky, an alien world preserved in perfect darkness. To stand at its shore, if we could, would be to gaze into time itself. Other valleys, rivers, and mountain ranges awaken, their outlines sharp against the retreating ice. The continent no longer appears as a blank sheet, but as a rugged land of peaks and basins, deserts of rock, and hidden lakes glittering in the open air. There is wonder in this unveiling, awe in the thought that our planet still holds mysteries vast enough to astonish us. And yet, the beauty carries a shadow, for these sights become visible only in the wake of catastrophe. To glimpse them means the seas have already risen, the world already transformed. The reveal is a gift wrapped in loss, a reminder that every hidden landscape is tied to a price, and that some doors are better left unopened. Lake Vostok is no ordinary lake. It is a time capsule, sealed beneath kilometers of ice for more than 15 million years. No wind has rippled its surface. No sunlight has warmed its depths. It has existed in perfect isolation, like a hidden world beneath the floor of our own. What might live there? Scientists can only guess. In the darkness, without light to feed plants, life must find other ways to endure. Perhaps microbes have learned to draw energy from the minerals of the surrounding rock. Perhaps they have adapted to the crushing pressure, the absence of oxygen, the silence of eternal night. If so, these organisms would be unlike anything we know. They would have evolved apart from the rest of Earth, following their own path in secret. To peer into their biology would be like glimpsing life on another planet, an echo of what might exist on Europa, the icy moon of Jupiter, or beneath the frozen crust of Enceladus around Saturn. But such beauty carries unease, for if these creatures were released into the wider world, how would they react? Would they fade quickly, unable to survive beyond their dark sanctuary? Or would they thrive, spreading traits and abilities unknown to modern life? The answer remains locked in the black waters, still waiting. Even the thought is humbling. As humanity builds cities, crafts machines, and gazes at the stars, entire ecosystems may be thriving beneath our feet, unseen and unimagined. Lake Vostok is a reminder that the Earth is not fully known. It holds mysteries as strange as any dream waiting beneath the ice. And sometimes, the greatest discoveries are not in space above us, but in the silence below. At last, the final pieces of Antarctica's armor give way. The vast sheets that have endured for millions of years crumble into the sea, their echoes carrying across the planet. There is no more ice to hold back. The melt is complete. The oceans swell to their highest mark, 70 meters above today's shores. 230 feet. Imagine the map of Earth redrawn in an instant. The familiar outlines of continents are gone, swallowed. The Atlantic and Pacific push far inland, flooding valleys, covering plains, claiming cities and towns that once stood proud. Along the Atlantic seaboard, skyscrapers vanish one by one beneath the tide. The coastlines of North America blur into scattered islands. In Europe, London lies beneath the waves. Paris follows. Amsterdam disappears entirely. The Mediterranean widens, consuming whole regions. Across Asia, Mumbai, Shanghai, and Jakarta megacities that once held tens of millions become watery graves. Africa's ports, the engines of trade and livelihood, vanish. South America's coastal capitals are drowned. For humanity, the toll is unthinkable. Nearly half the world's population, over 3 billion souls, lived near the sea. In this sudden flood, most are lost. The survivors flee inland, carrying little but memories. They watch as the places of their birth are erased, as if drawn in sand and washed away by a tide too vast to resist. The earth itself looks transformed. Coastlines recede like hairlines, mountains become islands, and entire regions vanish. What was once civilization's edge, the place where land met ocean, has shifted forever. This is the moment the planet feels different. A new Earth, born from the ruin of the old, its landscapes rewritten by water. The seas, eternal and patient, have claimed what was always theirs. When the seas begin to surge beyond all measure, panic spreads faster than the water itself. It does not roar at first, it whispers. Streets growing wet, rivers reversing their flow. A harbor swelling higher than the tide chart foretold. At first, people watch with unease. Then, realization dawns. The ocean is not receding. Families scramble to higher ground, clutching bags packed in haste, carrying children on their shoulders. Cars jam the highways leading inland, horns blaring, engines stalling as thousands flee in the same direction. But the water is quicker than wheels. Roads disappear beneath rushing tides. Bridges crumble. Escape routes vanish in moments. In the tallest cities, skyscrapers become lifeboats. People race to rooftops, huddling against the wind as the sea swallows the streets below. Some wave desperately for helicopters that may never come. Others build rafts from doors, from debris, from anything that floats, drifting between the steel towers of what were once proud avenues. Governments, unprepared for such sudden ruin, call for emergency evacuations. Fleets of boats are dispatched, but they are too few, too late. Radio stations hum with voices urging calm, yet static soon overtakes them as power grids drown. Entire nations vanish beneath the waves before aid can even be organized. The panic is not only in the cities. Farmland turns to swampland. Wells sour with salt. Refugees pour inland by the millions, overwhelming towns that were never meant to hold them. Desperation breeds conflict, as food grows scarce and shelters overflow, and through it all, the water keeps rising silent, relentless, indifferent. Humanity, for all its brilliance, is reduced to flight, scrambling like birds before a storm too vast to resist. The seas have claimed their due, and in the flood's shadow, we are left fragile, fearful, and unprepared. When the waters finally pause in their rise, the planet is unrecognizable. The shorelines, etched into human memory, the beaches where children once played, the ports where ships once sailed, the cities that glimmered at night are gone. A new world map has been drawn, not by pen or politics, but by the patient, overwhelming hand of the sea. The Atlantic coastline of the United States has vanished, replaced by a ragged edge of small islands. Florida is gone, remembered only in stories. In South America, the Amazon basin has widened into an inland sea. Africa's shape has changed entirely, its great ports swallowed. Asia has fractured into archipelagos where once there were nations. Yet as coasts are erased, new lands emerge not newly born, but newly revealed. Places once dismissed as too dry, too cold, too remote, are now the heart of survival. Denver, Minneapolis, and Las Vegas cities, once landlocked and overlooked, become safe havens. Their high ground is now priceless, their distance from the sea a shield. Across the globe, inland towns swell with refugees, their populations doubling, tripling overnight. High plateaus, deserts, and mountain valleys become crowded centers of life. The quiet plains of Canada, the frozen tundras of Siberia, the dry basins of Central Australia, all inherit the displaced, becoming the unlikely cradles of civilization. This shift is more than geography, it is culture reshaped. Families torn from their ancestral homes must learn to live in new climates, among strangers, building lives from nothing. Old borders lose their meaning, as nations are forced to share what little highland remains. Maps become patchworks of necessity, drawn not by choice but by survival. The world feels both smaller and stranger. Oceans stretch farther inland, yet safe land shrinks. Cities that once gleamed with history are gone, while dusty towns now carry the weight of humanity's future. In this remade geography, the Earth teaches us once more that nothing is permanent. Coasts shift, lands drown, and survival belongs to those who can adapt, who can begin again on unfamiliar soil. In the southern hemisphere, the flood brings devastation on a scale too vast to measure. Here, where coastlines cradle millions of lives, the sea swallows not only homes, but entire nations. Bangladesh, a country of rivers and deltas, vanishes beneath the waves. More than 160 million people are left with no land to call their own. Villages where families gathered for generations disappear overnight. The fertile plains that once fed a nation dissolve into the sea, leaving nothing but water where fields of rice once swayed. The tragedy spreads beyond Bangladesh. Low-lying islands across the Pacific, Tuvalu, Kiribati, the Maldives, are erased. Their cultures, songs, and histories are left to live only in memory as their people scatter to distant shores. Entire nations become refugees, carrying their identities in their voices, their traditions in their hands, with no soil to anchor them. As billions seek safety, the strain upon the world deepens. Countries with surviving land are overwhelmed by waves of humanity. Camps rise on higher ground, swelling into sprawling cities of the displaced. Food grows scarce, water becomes precious, and the question of who is welcome and where kindles tension between neighbors and nations. Borders blur beneath the weight of need. Those who once held power find themselves pleading for aid. Those who once felt secure watch as their own resources dwindle. Trust frays, conflict grows. Yet, amid the tragedy, there are moments of tenderness. Families share what little they have. Strangers shelter strangers. The songs of drowned nations are sung in new lands, a reminder that even when soil is lost, culture endures. The southern tragedy is not only about land disappearing. It is about humanity learning, painfully, that we are bound together. When one nation drowns, the whole world feels the flood. The story of melting ice does not end with Antarctica's glaciers. Far to the north, in the Arctic, and deep within the southern soils, another frozen giant begins to stir, the permafrost. Permafrost is more than frozen dirt. It is a vault of ancient life, soil locked in ice for tens of thousands of years. Beneath its hard surface lie frozen roots, grasses, and animal remains, remnants of worlds long gone, preserved like food kept in nature's deep freezer. Some layers have not thawed since the last ice age, more than 40,000 years ago. But as the planet warms, the ground softens. The frost retreats. What was once sealed begins to awaken. Bacteria and microbes, starved for ages, find fresh material to consume. They feast hungrily on the newly thawed remains, breaking them down, releasing gases as they do. Carbon dioxide and methane, two of the strongest greenhouse gases, pour upward into the air. Each bubble that escapes is like a sigh from the ancient earth, carrying with it the warmth of another age. The more the permafrost thaws, the more gas is released. The more gas fills the sky, the faster the earth warms. And the faster it warms, the deeper the permafrost melts. It is a cycle with no pause button, a frozen feedback loop. What was once locked away now fuels the fire, accelerating the planet's fever. Scientists describe this as a tipping point, a moment when change speeds beyond our control. And though the permafrost looks quiet, just soil, just tundra, it may hold more carbon than all the forests of the world combined. A giant, hidden storehouse, now opening its doors. The thawing ground is as dangerous as the rising sea. It does not roar, it does not surge, but with every softening layer, it releases a breath that reshapes the air we all share. When the frozen ground finally loosens, the first to awaken are not animals or plants, but the smallest of Earth's tenants, microbes, tiny, invisible, yet countless beyond measure. And when they rise from their icy sleep, their feast begins. For tens of thousands of years, ancient grasses, roots, and animal remains lay frozen, waiting. Now, thawed and softened, they become food. The microbes eat greedily, multiplying, breaking down the long-buried matter. And like all creatures, after they eat, they release what their bodies cannot keep. In this case, the microbes' after effects are not small. They exhale carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases far more powerful than what we burn from coal or oil. In plain words, they burp and they fart, filling the air with invisible heat-trapping clouds. It sounds almost comical at first, tiny microbes gassing up the planet. But the reality is sobering, with billions upon billions of them stirring across the thawing Arctic and Antarctic soils. Their combined breath can tilt Earth's climate even faster. A frozen dinner, popped into the microwave of warming, now releasing ancient air into our modern sky. The paradox is stark. Life, so small it cannot be seen, has the power to change the fate of everything else. Mountains may stand tall, oceans may stretch wide, but it is the invisible work of microbes that could tip the balance of the world's temperature. So the Earth warms, not just from our machines, but also from the quiet sighs of creatures too small to notice. Their invisible chorus drifts upward, surrounding us, adding fuel to the fever already spreading across the globe. A reminder that sometimes it is not the loudest forces that change the world, but the quietest. As the permafrost thaws, it does not release only gases. It also unlocks the invisible archives of life, viruses that have not stirred since mammoths walked the earth. Frozen in suspended animation for tens of thousands of years, they awaken in a world utterly changed. Unlike bacteria, viruses are trickier still. They cannot live on their own. They require a host. If they find one, an animal, a bird, perhaps even a human, they may begin to spread. To our immune systems, they would be strangers from another age, carrying patterns no body has ever learned to fight. Now imagine this happening in a world already fevered. The earth is hotter, food is scarcer, billions are displaced. Crowded camps rise inland, people living shoulder to shoulder, struggling for clean water, for space, for safety. In such conditions, a single spark of infection could sweep like fire through dry grass. Creating a vaccine would be a race against time, made harder by the chaos. Laboratories might be underwater, supply chains broken, nations fractured by desperation. Even communication could falter, as power grids and infrastructure collapse beneath the pressure of migration and unrest. The image is haunting, as humanity faces rising seas, poisoned fields, and a fevered sky. It also battles enemies too small to see viruses older than civilization, carried into the present by thawing soil. And yet, within this fear lies perspective. It reminds us that we are not the first to face such threats. Life has always been tested by microbes, by plagues, by invisible trials. Each time, we have endured, sometimes scarred, but still moving forward. The question is not whether humanity can survive, but how gently we can navigate a future where the past itself awakens to test us. When we think of Antarctica, we picture a white desert, endless ice under a pale sky. But what if, after the melt, it became something entirely different? Imagine, instead of snow and silence, a warm, green land echoing a time long before humans ever walked the earth. For Antarctica was not always frozen. 34 million years ago, it was a lush, temperate rainforest, alive with towering trees and flowing rivers. Fossilized leaves, buried beneath today's ice, tell of ferns and palms swaying in the breeze. Ancient creatures, early relatives of crocodiles and birds, wandered through its wetlands, while dragonflies skimmed across sunlit pools. Now, as the ice vanishes, that ancient world stirs again. The continent, freed from its frozen armor, warms beneath the sunday. Palm trees take root along the coasts, their fronds swaying where glaciers once stood. Forests spread across the valleys, fed by rains that once fell only as snow. Rivers carve through the land, winding toward new seas. In these imagined forests, new creatures arrive. Perhaps reptiles thriving in the warmth bask on the shores of once icy lakes. Birds settle in the trees, their songs replacing the silence that reigned for millennia. The continent no longer resembles the end of the earth. It has become a new paradise, alive and green. But this paradise is bittersweet. It blooms only because the rest of the world has drowned. It thrives because ice is gone, because seas have risen, because climates everywhere else have been thrown into chaos. And so Antarctica's transformation is not a gift, but a reminder. The Earth is always changing. What was once ice can become forest. What was once barren can bloom again. But every shift comes with a cost, and every paradise is born from a sacrifice. Take a slow breath. Let it out. The visions we have wandered through, the floods, the microbes, the drowned cities, and the green rebirth of Antarctica are not our world today. They are dreams, possibilities, painted in what if, a reminder of the fragile threads that hold our planet in balance. Antarctica is still here, still cloaked in its ancient ice. The Doomsday Glacier has not yet collapsed. The oceans continue to lap at the shores we know, and monuments still rise proudly above the waves. Life carries on, ordinary and miraculous, across fields, forests, deserts, and coasts. But the whispers of Antarctica are real. Its glaciers do melt, slowly, steadily. Its balance does affect us all, and its story is not one we can ignore. The future is unwritten, shaped by the choices we make today. Choices about how we live, what we protect, and how gently we treat the earth that shelters us. So, as you drift now toward sleep, let the weight of fear fall away. Let the story rest as a lesson, not a prophecy. Imagine the ice still shining, the penguins still gathered on its shores, the auroras still rippling across its endless sky. The world, for now, is still whole. And tomorrow, when you wake, remember that knowledge is a kind of light. The more we listen to the whispers of the earth, the better we can care for it and for each other. Thank you for journeying into this story tonight. If you would like to hear more gentle tales of science and wonder, subscribe and join us again. Until then, may your dreams be calm, your rest deep, and your heart steady, like the slow, patient rhythm of the earth itself.